Kumbh Mela, one of the largest spiritual gatherings on the planet, is not just about faith and rituals anymore. It has also become a massive social media moment where influencers, content creators and global storytellers bring their grandeur, the devotion, cultural significance to the screens worldwide. Digital creators have played a big role in shaping how we perceive and engage with the age-old traditions.
So, Jan 29th marked one of the most significant Snan days. There were lakhs and lakhs of devotees, as we all know, in Prayagraj, in that act of faith. And beyond everything that happened, beyond the visuals, beyond the viral reels, there's also a weight to that day. We thought we'd have some of the people who were present on that day share their experiences, but also share their experiences covering all of the Mahakumbh in the last few days.
Also, so how has social media then shaped the storytelling around Kumbh? To discuss this, we are joined by Nick Puka. He's here with us on the show, on the sets here today, better known as Indo Genius. Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Namaskar, Sonaji. Namaskar,
Namaskar.
Toyaji.
Lovely, lovely. Love that, Nick. So you have just come back from Kumbh. Let me start by asking you the easiest question. Describe what it was like being at Kumbh in one word or perhaps a line.
Well, look, I've had the honour and privilege of being at Kumbh twice already. So I initially went on day 0, Posh Purnima, and then on Makar Sankranti for the first Shahi Amrit Snan. And then I was able to return, this time with my wife and daughter, for the last few days for Mauni Amavasya. So it was very, very special, incredible honour and privilege to visit Kumbh twice. I was, last night, I've been back home in Delhi, and I can still hear Kumbh. There is a sound to Kumbh, which is impossible to describe because it's a combination of the devotees, people singing bhajans as they walk through the crowd so they can all stay together as a group, loudspeaker announcements, a general hum, and there's this incredible Kumbh sound, which I can still hear resonating in my ears.
Wow.
Tell us a little bit about the last time you were there. You also plan to go again. So
Yeah.
talk about that. And if maybe we should actually do this right now. Let's just play out for our audiences one of the videos of yours that have gone viral explaining Kumbh. Then we'll come back to you to hear more from you. Let's just do that for our audiences. All right, that's playing in the side. We can't actually hear it yet.
Yeah.
So when it's queued up, we'll actually go back to it. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like the second time you went, and then we'll talk about the future, the fact that you want to go again.
So the second time was the greatest gathering of humanity to ever have taken place. And actually, I think Prayag is a place that has been visited by more people over time than anywhere else on earth. If you think there are tens of millions, crores of people there right now, there have been millions of people visiting each year for the Magh Melas as well as the Ardkumbhs and the Purna Kumbhs, hundreds of thousands in the millennia past. And if you add that cumulatively up, over 1 billion people have visited this place. So it has that combined focus and attention for such a long period of time. And when we were there on Mauni Amavasya, this is the silent new moon. This is the moment when the creation of the universe is said to have taken place right there at Prayag, in the Prithvi Jaya Jaganam, the loins of the earth. This is where everything came into existence, where earth and where atmosphere and heaven separated, Bhur Bhava Swaha, separated out. And the Akshaya tree at the Sangam and the Brahma Yupa pole that is said to be the axis of the universe is right there at Prayag. Okay, so this is an incredibly important place in terms of the focus of time, of history, of devotion, of faith. Now, as we're approaching this moment, Mauni Amavasya, it's a countdown, a celestial countdown. You've got 3 clocks, all synchronizing. You've got Jupiter, Brihaspati, entering into Taurus, Vrishab. Then you've got the sun, Surya, entering Makar, Capricorn. And then finally, you have the countdown in the Krishna Paksh, down towards Mauni Amavasya, down towards the new moon. Everything is getting darker and darker until the new moon, when everything is at its stillest. And it's at that moment that tens of millions of people want to come to the same place. And tragically, a population the size of the United Kingdom trying to get to an area that's smaller than Central Park. And tragically, in the crowds, there was this awful stampede, this crush. And it was in a location that I had the privilege, the fortune to be at last week for Makar Sankranti, the first Shahi Amritsar, with my friends and family there. And this time, we were actually on the Arail on the southern side, on Mauni Amavasya, that night, that fateful night. And we only heard word of what was going on as we entered boats at just before sunrise in the Brahma Muhurat. So we were entering onto these boats. We were hearing these awful kind of whispers, rumors, stories. And we were going out into the waters with the anticipation of taking a snan, pindan, turpan, remembering our ancestors, giving thanks for them, helping them in their journeys. I have an Indian wife, me too. I have Indian family members, so we were thinking of those. We were thinking my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, the Pragwals, the acharyas that are doing the turpan for you, are making you remember the names of all of your relatives that have gone before you. In my case, my father, my wife's case, her mother and father, as well as grandparents and great-grandparents. 21 generations of ancestors. And it is that is the motivator for so many of the tirthyatris, the devotees, to travel all across India, all across the world in some cases, to this place at this time. They're not doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for getting a child into university or a good marriage or a healthy bank account or the stock market to go up. They're doing it for their ancestors, their parents and their grandparents. They're doing it to serve others. They're putting their own lives at risk to be there. And when we heard that some of them may have lost their lives, that made the whole experience just very different, because it suddenly brought home the importance of this to those people, the fact they're willing to risk lives. And whilst we were, on the one hand, so happy to be there and so grateful to be there, also we were thinking of them. So we then started to all think and pray for the families and the lives that were lost, and the loved ones and the people that were trying to find each other in the crowds. So it was a very different experience. Last week, the Makar Sankranti Snan was one where just filled of joy, pure anand, pure bliss. It was incredible. Coming in and out of the water, taking Snan, was just a beautiful, joyful experience. But this time, because of what had happened at the Sangam Nose, it became much more real, much more powerful, and it really hit me in the heart.
I'm just going to pause you over there for a minute to... No, I can see you're just overwhelmed with so many emotions.
Yeah, it is actually quite emotional, just thinking about it.
It is,
It really is.
Yeah, so, I just want to understand first that, do you think what happened will change how things are over there?
The managing a crowd the size of the population of the UK is no mean feat. What the government, what the UP police are doing is extraordinary. I mean, it is a miracle of crowd management to have so many people visit such a small place. But the real reason why people are able to do this successfully, peacefully, for the vast majority, and why these things are so awful and so tragic, because they're so exceptional, is the crowd, the people, the devotees, the tirthyatris, the kalpvasis. They're there for such beautiful reasons. There's a very, there's a very sattvic atmosphere. People are there for the right reasons. They're there for others, and people are, by and large, there's a lot of accommodation and movement. And yes, you can, if people are pushing behind you, it's, there's a moment when it's tough, and that's when, in a split second, things can tragically change. A barrier can break, or people who are on the floor in front can, end up having people coming over them. But most people are just moving as one beautiful, compromising, consensus-driven, we're all heading in this direction, you're heading in that direction. There's a flow and part of being a big crowd where the ego and the individual dissolves in this sea of oneness that you have to physically experience. And it's not like being in a crowd, getting onto the underground at Oxford Circus in London, getting onto the Tube or the New York subway, or going, dare I say it, God bless Chris Martin and his friends, but it's not like queuing outside a stadium to get into a music concert or going to a music festival. I've experienced all of those things. This is different, and it is much more sattvic and much more kind of like accommodating.
I want to ask you, one of the things we've talked about so much, Nick, even before you came here, was the fact that we talk so much about the spiritual importance of this place, but historically, economically, architecturally, there's a whole other story here that is also to be celebrated. Could you touch on that?
There are really good reasons to think that this is the most important place on earth. I mean, if over 1 billion people have visited this place, now most of them obviously are doing it for reasons of faith, of shrad, of devotion, okay? Yeah. So there's a spiritual angle to that. And there's a personal bhakti, there are rituals, there are things that they're doing as individuals. Then there are sadhus. Now the sadhus are exemplars of people who have accomplished their sadhana, their practices, renunciation. They've given up the life, the comforts of the lives that we lead as householders, as grihast. And they are there to share their teachings and share their experiments with consciousness and what it is to be human, okay? Then you have the acharyas and the great gurus and the wisdom and the teachers there. So think about Kumbh as the world's largest open university. Okay, so this is a place where people for thousands of years have come together to learn. It's like going to a scientific conference, but the students are invited, not just the academics. So everyone is coming there to learn from teachers that have come from different parts of the country or the world. They're coming together to share their experiments, their experiments with what it is to be human, their experiments with consciousness. Then you've got the trade aspects, you've got business, you've got revenue, economic, and that's always been part of Kumbh. People bringing and selling things as part of that. But you keep winding back these layers. You've got a geological layer. We're north of the Vindhya Hills. We're on the alluvial plans that have fed tens of billions of people over the millennia. Okay, there's 800 million people today in that area, but if you add the population up, it's tens of billions. So that's because of the jal, that's because of the water, the rivers and the rain. It's because of the bhumi, it's because of the fertile soil where all the nutrients are coming off the Himalaya, which is like this giant kind of source of nutrients, and the surya, the sunshine. So all of that comes together in the Gangetic plain. So these huge rivers are there, rivers of life, Ma Ganga, Ma Yamuna, coming together and nourishing the lives of billions of people at the most densely populated part of the world in our species history. So that is the significance from a geological, geographical perspective. Historically, you have not only all these people coming together, but you have the kings, you have Buddha must have visited on his way from Varanasi through to Kaushambi, Ashoka. You have Harshvardhana, the emperor, when Shanzang, the Chinese traveler, visited, Harshvardhana was there. We know that Akbar built his fort there in 1584. Jahangir declared himself emperor when he split from his father Akbar in 1600 and ruled from Allahabad as it was 1600, 1604. Then you have the British East India Company, 1765, signing the Treaty of Allahabad at Allahabad Fort, at Prayag, which gave them the Divani over Bengal, Bihar, Odisha. Then in 1858, you have Canning reading out Victoria's proclamation, which ends the East India Company rule and transfers power to the British government, the British Raj. Then you have independence movement, Anand Bhavan, the Nehru family, all of the action that was going on in Daraganj and civil lines. You have, in 1954, the first president of India, Rajendra Prasad, is a Kalpvasi. He takes the vow to stay there for 30 days. He is eating uncooked food and simple dal chawal. He's taking snan 3 times a day. He's with the people. Pradhan Mantri, first Prime Minister Nehru visits in 1954. So this, I mean, you go back thousands of years.
You could go on and on.
Yes.
Nick, the way you describe
Every level.
The way you describe it, trust me, we could also go on and on listening to you. But I'm worried my viewers would be wondering at this point that who is this guy? How does he know so much about India? So can you tell us the story of how Nick became Indo-genius?
No, I'm not Indo-genius. No, I'm just Nick, and all I'm celebrating is the Indo-genius, okay? So Kumbh Mela is Indo-genius.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing it. Your next,
tell us-
segment on this technology. This sounds like Indogenius.
There is a story here. Though,
UPI
to be
is
fair.
Indogenius.
If it's all right for me to share, the way in which you've come to be in love with India, your story where it is that, you met your wife, you've gone on to build this platform that educates, that spreads so much knowledge. And it's not just about Kumbh, right? I want to share one of your most viral videos explains to audiences why INA is INA, the market in Delhi. So how did that come to be? How did that be the path that you chose?
Yeah, what makes you fall in love?
I'm naturally
with India every
curious,
day? Yeah.
and I'm really pro people. I love humanity. I think that what we have between our ears is the most sophisticated, complicated, and extraordinary thing in the world, the human brain. And there are more human brains and more consciousness here in India. And I think weirdly with this world of artificial intelligence we're kind of not giving enough credit for just how extraordinary human consciousness is. And what really makes human consciousness so special is that it's connected to the heart, to Shrid, right? So we have a heart. No machine will ever have a heart. No AI, no DeepSeek, no OpenAI. None of them will ever have a heart. We have manas, we have a mind, we have a heart. And we have chit, we have the ability, and bud, we have the ability to discriminate, and we have a history and experiences that our ancestors, our parents, culture, texts, everything pours into us and through us into our actions. And in India, you have more people than anywhere else on earth. So if you're pro-people, India's cool. You've had more people living here over history. So again, you've got more collective experience than anywhere else on earth. And you have the warmest, friendliest, kindest, most generous, most loving people on earth. The compassion that you see in India. And of course there are exceptions, and there are plenty of nasty people doing nasty things. But generally speaking, and when you're at a place like Kumbh Mela, you are experiencing that, whether it's the bandaras, whether it's the helping people across the road or through the crowds. This is a place where you experience that humanity and the scale and the compassion and the consciousness and the heart better than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So that's why I love India and Indians, and why I have loved going to Kumbh Mela, and I can't wait to go back.
This is a good time to ask you, what was your big takeaway from Kumbh? Did you come back with one learning, with one awakening? What would that be?
Can't beat a good snan. Really, I'm never cold water is not something that we go to Rishikesh quite often. I have taken snans in Mahakumbh. One of the most extraordinary experiences I had was the total solar eclipse in Varanasi. And I did get into Mahakumbh there that day. But it's the fact that these rituals there are reasons behind rituals, and listen to what is being said and investigate the etymology, the meanings of the words, try and get to the essence. So tarpan, satisfying one's ancestors. So it's just, if there's something incomplete, you need to fill it in that moment. And obviously hoping to pass that on to our daughter, hoping that one day she'll return there. One of the most beautiful experiences of the whole trip. This would be my takeaway. She was with one of her friends, and we were there on Monima Amavasya. We were there at the Triveni Sangam. We were on the boat, handboat, and they looked at each other and they said spontaneously, they said, "Next time Jupiter enters Taurus and Sun enters Capricorn, we will come here." And they made a promise to, in 12 years' time, they'll be 21 years old then, to come back to the same place. I thought that was very beautiful. So I'm going to remember that.
How do you, because you're raising this young daughter, how are you bringing in all of this knowledge into her life? Where is she curious? What are the aspects in her day-to-day she finds, she's still curious about when it comes to Indian history, when it comes to getting to know about Indian spirituality? And how do you sort of give her those leads without coming across as that dad that just has too much information to tell
not just
their
me.
kid?
My wife, Meetu, is Indian. We lived with my mother-in-law for many years, so there's a lot of Indian
influence,
family kind of knowledge poured in. We were there with other family members, Shabani and Raghav. They came with us, so it's a family effort. But for me, obviously, I'm an outsider, so I have this curiosity and this trying to understand how things come together, and I think that's one advantage that foreigners have. So if you look at the history of the Kumbh, many of the texts we have, apart from the Prayag Mahatmya and the Puranas and Mahabharata and Tulsidas Ramayana, there's lots of Indian sources, but there's also these foreigners, whether it be Chinese or British or Greek, who've come to this and they've described it with the curiosity that you can only really have as an outsider. Why is that happening? Why are they doing that? What's going on here? And I've just fully, over 17 years, just fully embraced every opportunity that this wonderful country and people and my family have offered, and then sharing that with our daughter and making her realize how lucky she is to live in this extraordinary city. Delhi is amazing. It's the best place in the world if your eyes are open to the opportunities to learn and experience what it is to be human. It's all here. And the trees and the birds are fabulous. And the birds at Kumbh were amazing. We saw pied kingfishers, which are the only kingfishers to hover, flying above the waters at the Sangam, at the confluence, and then diving in and dipping into the Amrit.
Because they knew.
Coming out.
They knew too.
All right, Nick, lovely, absolutely lovely to have you. We could do this for a really long time, but maybe we'll sit offline and
See
talk
you in 12
more about
years.
it. See you. Maybe before that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't have to be a Kumbh related.
Yeah.